This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Sudan's military council and leaders of ongoing protests set to hold talks. Egyptians start voting on proposed constitutional amendments to restructure the country's political system. And how China's navy is modernizing. We have exclusive access to one of the country's conventional submarines. Hello and thank you for joining us on Africa Live. I am Peninah Karibe. Also coming up this hour, what South Africa is doing to increase access to high-quality education in rural areas. And in sports, former world and Olympic 1500 meters champion Özbal Kiprop banned for doping. Let's start in Sudan, where the ruling military council is set to hold talks with protest leaders in the coming hours. The meeting comes ahead of plans by the protesters to name a civilian body to provide an alternative leadership for the country. According to one of the planners, if the military does not heed their demands, the protesters will announce what they described as a sovereign civilian council on Sunday. Military leaders have been insisting that they will hand over to a civilian government after 2 years. Meanwhile, Sudan's former president Omar al-Bashir could be facing money laundering charges in the near future. This follows the announcement by the country's public prosecutor that he has begun investigations into the former president's financial activities. The probe also focuses on illegal possession of large sums of foreign currency. A judicial source told Reuters news agency that $351,000 together with 6 million euros were found in al-Bashir's home. After his ouster, Bashir was eventually transferred to the Kobar maximum prison in Khartoum. Let's cross over to Libya, where heavy clashes have broken out in the southern districts of the Libyan capital, Tripoli, with residents saying the shelling was audible from the city center. Eastern Libyan forces led by Khalifa Haftar launched an offensive on Tripoli more than 2 weeks ago, but their march has so far been halted in the southern outskirts by the government of National Accord forces. According to the World Health Organization, the fighting has so far killed more than 200 and wounded more than 1,000 people. This intensifying of the battle for Tripoli's control comes shortly after the revelation that US President Donald Trump spoke with Khalifa Haftar early this week. Trump praised Haftar's role in fighting terrorism and securing Libya's vast oil resources. Here's CGTN's Adel Mahri with more details.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi inspected the closest military base to the Libyan border. He is making sure it is prepared to defend the country in case the situation in Libya worsens.
Egypt is on high alert. The country is ready to intervene immediately against any breach to its western border with Libya. Since 2014, Egypt has been developing its military hardware and holding numerous military exercises to enhance border protection capabilities.
If Libyan National Army leader Khalifa Haftar gets defeated in Tripoli, it could create volatility over Egypt's border security. Cairo, therefore, has brought international support to the general. The latest appeared to come from the White House.
Tunisia fear the Haftar-led operation in Tripoli. It increased the influx of Libyans at its border. Egypt, UAE and Saudi Arabia are supporting the LNA on an international level. Egypt is holding meeting to preserve the unity of the Libyan army, which will reflect on security in the region.
Haftar's security grip has pushed away ISIL fighters from South Libya to neighboring sub-Saharan countries. He's controlling the border with Algeria, and if he succeeds in Tripoli, he could soon control the border with Tunisia. That has withdrawn a lot of international support from the UN-backed government.
Foreign countries have interest in Libya. Italy is trying to regain influence, aiming for its petroleum resources, but is still against Haftar to a great extent. France wants to expand and enrich its African presence in Libya, so their interference might not help.
Instability in Libya shakes the entire North African region. thus spreading threats to Europe, Sub-Saharan and West Africa. It appears that after many years of Faiz al-Sarraj's failure to maintain a strong grip over Tripoli, several countries are turning to Khalifa Haftar as a pragmatic alternative to contain the conflict in Libya within its territories. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
In the Democratic Republic of Congo, jihadist militant group ASL has claimed responsibility for an attack in the east of the country in which 3 people were killed. The attack happened on Thursday at a village called Bovata near the town of Beni. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa has more from Kinshasa.
2 Congolese soldiers and a civilian were killed in a gunfight in Bovata near the border between DRC and Uganda. The Islamic State claimed that it killed the soldiers in a message posted online. It has, however, not been possible to independently verify the claim. Local authorities suspect the Islamic State could have links to the Allied Democratic Forces, a Ugandan Islamist group that operates in the area. The attack comes 3 weeks after the Congolese president asked the US for military assistance in fighting terrorism. President Tshisekedi warned that the Islamic State could seek to establish a caliphate in the DRC after being pushed out of its strongholds in Syria and Iraq. Eastern DRC has more than 20 armed groups operating in the area. Some of them have seriously disrupted the response of the current Ebola outbreak. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
In northern Uganda, where the rebels of the Lord's Resistance Army waged a 2-decade-long insurgency against the government, women with disabilities continue to experience severe discrimination, sexual and gender-based violence. Our reporter Daniel Arap Moi brings us this story from Gulu.
After 20 years of displacement and war, the people of northern Uganda are building new lives, but the challenges are daunting for people with disability. Frequently abandoned, women with disabilities face isolation and abuse as the country moves forward without them.
Most of our women with disability who went under landmine are left out. Most of them are staying alone without a man.
The war in northern Uganda took a particularly devastating toll on persons with disabilities. Rebel attacks forced people to flee, and those who could not often faced violence. Many of the disabled here say that their existence is not even felt within their local community settings. Some say that they are abused by not only strangers, but even close relatives and friends.
Some community event, you will go there and they indignate you. You said they will not show you respect. That is my challenge.
Women with disabilities, in most cases, people take them as if they are of no value. That is, if a man wants to fulfill his own sexual desire, can easily go to a lady or to a woman. After completing his desire, automatically will leave. Sometimes might have left her pregnant. And at the end of the day, we never accept that he is the one who impregnated the lady.
Despite the fact that the government of Uganda has worked tirelessly to address the needs of many vulnerable groups, serious challenges remain. Here in Gulu, many still hold on to hope that maybe someday efforts by the government in protecting their rights will yield some positive results. Jacqueline Accord is a 32-year-old tailor and a mother of 1 who was dumped by her husband because of her disability. She tells CGTN that she not only bears the burden of looking after herself and child, but her sister too.
I'm the one caretaking the kid, doing all the necessary things for him, as well as renting. And I have my sister, my follower, who is with me. I'm taking care of her, plus the children. She has 4 kids.
Despite their current predicament, disabled women and men in Gulu have found their self-confidence through sports.
When I came here and I met so many people with different disability, I started feeling like I'm not alone. And besides, mine is at least.
For many of the disabled here, disability is simply not inability to fight back and defend their rights to live a dignified life.
As peace returns to the north and humanitarian organizations scale back their involvement here, local district authorities are finding it difficult to provide services, especially to vulnerable groups such as the disabled.
Daniel Arap Moi, CGTN, Northern Uganda.
In Egypt, the first day of voting for the Egyptian referendum has passed without any major incident. Citizens are voting on constitutional amendments which could Sisi stay in office until 2030. Here's Adel Mahri with more details.
Political powers supporting the Egyptian president made sure the vote appears like a festive occasion. Loudspeakers have been set up in Cairo, attracting residents to the nearest polling station in their neighborhood.
Personally, I love this celebrative mood. I join the people who are celebrating outside. It's a sign of joy and excitement, turning a serious political event into a time to be.
We try to cover as many voting stations as possible. It's too early to measure the turnout. It's a 3-day process. So far, we haven't seen any incidents worth reporting. The entire process appears to be transparent.
Details of the constitutional amendments are displayed at the ballots for voters who would like to review the changes. Egypt is keen to make this process, which will extend the president's terms in office, as transparent as possible.
There is great responsibility on Egyptians to voice their opinions. With our participation, we are building our country, helping it to prosper and become stable.
No significant violations have been reported during the first day.
The main concern in this vote is not the result. The referendum is highly expected to pass. Many are more interested in the turnout, which will reflect the actual support these changes have. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Time for us to take a quick break. Here's what's still ahead. How China's Navy is modernizing. We have exclusive access to one of the country's conventional submarines. And what South Africa is doing to increase access to high-quality education in rural areas.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself. If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Coming up next, we take you inside a Chinese submarine to see how the underwater forces are boosting the country's naval strength.
From coastal defense to open waters, from a surface fleet to a comprehensive force, the People's Liberation Army Navy is undergoing a strategic transformation. Come on board with me, Han Bin, for an inside look as China's Navy sets sail into the future.
The submarine force of the People's Liberation Army Navy is crucial in the Navy's overall strength. With the changing naval strategy, the submarine force is on course to more distant waters. Today, in our special series, Red Star Blue Water, CGTN correspondent Han Bin has exclusive access to one of China's conventional submarines and crew. He finds out how the Navy is speeding up modernization.
One of the most lethal weapons in or on the sea, usually beneath the surface and training away from prying eyes.
隐蔽性是我们潜艇的生命。潜艇兵就是这么个特点啊，在水下时间长，生活相对来说比较枯燥。
At a military port on China's east coast is a submarine unit. Its missions can take the crew anywhere and anytime. We follow them into the heart of the vessel. Captain Zhao Haijun is inside the conference room.
这个希望同志们
He stresses the crew must be on alert at all times to drive the point home. The message is that training must be intensified to optimize performance.
潜艇工作是一个有风险的工作，但是我觉得这种风险是人为能控制的。只要我们每个艇员遵章、认真执行每一个条令条例规定的动作，这个风险我觉得没什么。前面马道我们走不着。
Seaman Wang Xiaolong takes me to the living area. The 26-year-old has been serving on the ship ever since it was commissioned some 6 years ago. He says the cramped quarters are not the biggest challenge, it's living underwater.
不要问我在哪里，问我也不能告诉你，是那个，就是无名英雄吧，应该。选择这一行肯定就要踏踏实实的干，看不到没有白天黑夜这个概念，主要就是有艇上有那个24小时的那个时钟，来分辨这个现在是晚上还是白天。青菜一般储存的时间比较短，然后前一般就是那种过水的青菜，远航的时候过水的青菜，然后后期搭配一些罐头。
Everyone has their own role in the mission. Wang Xiaolong works from the bridge, where he has a view of the water when the submarine is on the surface. He shows me the navigation meters and their functions. This is a 039B type submarine, representative of some of the Navy's current core strength. The improved weaponry is a source of pride for Wang.
采用了长水滴型的艇体。 这种艇型的设计有利于我们潜艇保持水下的隐蔽性、信息化、自动化程度非常的高。我们艇员经常走啊，他很熟练了。你慢一点。我们在这个艇上工作生活了很长时间，非常有感情。所以说这种情感是非常特殊的。我们跟战友是一样的。岸港练的主要内容是针对一些应急操纵的项目，当非常熟练的时候。 The
039B is equipped with air-independent propulsion technology and advanced systems that help it dive deeper and move faster and more quietly.
通过各种训练，能把各种应急处置的预案非常熟练，很多都是条件反射式的，来了情况马上处置，很多动作应该都是1秒记的。手轻5度，潜到120米，岸港苦练，海上精练。 只有在岸上这些项目都熟练了，在海上的训练才会确保万无一失。
After a late start in the 1960s, the country prioritized submarine development. Today it has both nuclear-powered and diesel-electric submarines. The fleet is expected to grow as the Navy focuses more on blue water missions.
我们还要 立足我们现有的装备，充分发挥人的作用，争取把我们新的装备、新质的战斗力和我们人更完美的结合在一起，向世界一流海军迈进，做出我们潜艇兵应有的贡献。
It's all calm for now, but the Navy knows there's strength in silence.
多满多
Han Bin, CGTN, from a submarine port in East China.
In the next episode of our special series, Red Star Blue Water, we focus on China's escort missions off the coast of Somalia. The missions have come to symbolize its blue water status and improve its combat capabilities in open waters. Be sure to join us then.
This is Chinese naval warship 547 calling.
不惧炮火，不惧危险。
演习战斗警报。
军人受尊敬的不是这个名字，而是他肩头担负的责任。
朝向2拐动，进3。
This international peacekeeping operation has also reinforced naval capabilities in open waters.
To South Africa now, and President Cyril Ramaphosa has committed to accelerating the installation of modern infrastructure in the country's schools. Ramaphosa presided over the opening of 3 high-tech schools in the rural KwaZulu-Natal province. The areas previously only had mud structures built by local communities. CGTN Zulis and Jamila has more.
From mud huts to smart boards, the mud huts have now been replaced with modern brick and mortar structures with additional design elements. The new schools have multi-purpose classrooms and science labs. They're also equipped with a multimedia center with a fully fitted library and computer center. Touchscreen laptops have been donated to the learners and to teachers at the schools. Ramaphosa says he's confident that the government is on the right path.
Education, as Nelson Mandela said, is the most important weapon that you can use against poverty. And we have seen how it can be utilized. By doing this, we are spreading the seed of real effective education. We are ensuring that the children who come from this area are going to be well educated. Our government is investing a lot of money.
The president says this drive is to ensure that the country produces learned future leaders.
Already here, we are looking at the future scientists that our country is going to have. We are looking at the future lawyers that our country is going to produce. We are looking at the future pilots that our country is going to have. They already show that they are capable, they are articulate, they are clever.
The president says the new model used to build better schools in the country will help in eradicating schools without water, sanitation and electricity. The designs also comply with current and future school requirements and complement the rural environment in which they are situated. The building of schools forms part of the president's call for collaboration between civil society and government to realize the children's rights to safety and dignity in educational facilities. Yodisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Ahead in sports. Former world and Olympic 1500 meters champion Esbol Kiprop banned for doping.
The Mahale Mountains National Park in Tanzania is home to the eastern subspecies of chimpanzee. Mwiga Mambo and his family came from this area before the national park existed. Following in the footsteps of his father and uncle, Mwiga introduces humans to chimpanzees that are thriving in his ancestral home.
That is the alpha male. Don't worry, stay where you are. All in all, that is a raining dance also. Because they've been cold. I was so sympathized with how they're shivering.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Former world and Olympic 1500 meters champion Esbol Kiprop of Kenya has been handed a 4-year ban by the Athletics Integrity Unit for doping. The Kenyan 2008 Olympics gold medalist had been tentatively suspended by the IAAF's Athletics Integrity Unit in May last year after testing positive to blood-boosting EPO in and out of competition test in Iten in November 2017. Kiprop's ban has been backdated from February 3rd, 2018, but the athlete has another opportunity to appeal at the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Kiprop had put a vigorous appeal at the IAAF Disciplinary Tribunal in London. South Africa's national under-20 football team will play a number of friendly matches before the World Cup tournament in Poland next month. The squad will be playing 2 friendlies before making their appearance at the global showpiece. CGTN's CS Duplessis has more.
Matches against Saudi Arabia and Ukraine in the next few weeks lie ahead for coach Thabo Senong's group of promising stars. Both stern challenges ahead of the World Cup in Poland, where Senong hopes his charges will realize their true potential.
We need to come out of our group. That's our priority. Group F, Portugal, Korea Republic, Argentina. Easy teams, not really. Tough teams, not really. You know, good teams, yes, they are good teams. Are we one of the good teams? Yes. You look at the past 20 months, we've played 20 games. We've only lost 1 game against Senegal. We've drawn 3 matches and then we've won the rest. So it shows that there's something good going on in this team.
It has been a grueling road to the football showpiece, 20 months of hard graft and fact for Amajita, but now the hard work really starts as they prepare for the biggest tournament of their fledgling careers.
Last year, before we started qualifiers, and we were a bit under pressure that, we need to do it again, and we need to show that the South African football is progressing. So I think the guys came in, we worked hard. It was difficult during the qualifiers, and it was especially difficult during AFCON, but we pulled through. We even managed to get a bronze medal at AFCON, so I think the boys did a really good job.
As a collective, the group of players aim to follow in the footsteps of the senior national team and become regulars in the Bafana Bafana setup.
Yeah, look, of course, it's a progress for us, I would say. This is just a stepping stone. Some of us have been through under 17, going to under 20, and our goal is, of course, going under 23, then Bafana, taking it step by step. But, of course, like you said, the Vision 22, that's the vision of SAFA. And I think if we just perform, we do our best, who knows what can happen in 22, we might be there.
With only one defeat in the last 20 months of football, the South African under-20 side are now a formidable force on the African continent. They're quietly confident going into the World Cup in Poland, and they believe they will progress out of their group at the tournament next month. CS Du Plessis, CGTN, Johannesburg.
In England, Manchester City moved back to the top of the English Premier League on Saturday after they beat Tottenham 1-0 at the Etihad Stadium. Phil Foden was a surprise starter for City, and the 18-year-old vindicated his manager's decision after 5 minutes when he headed home an early opener. Spurs did come back into the game and had chances on the counter-attack through the dangerous Heung-min Son. City were then dealt a huge blow after losing their star midfielder Kevin De Bruyne to injury in the first period. This was the third time in 10 days that these two sides have met, with Tottenham progressing to the Champions League semis at the expense of City in the other encounters. Gerald Miller's fight against heavyweight world champion Anthony Joshua, scheduled for June 1st at the Madison Square Garden in New York City, has been called off. The cancellation comes after Miller was denied a boxing license due to failing 2 tests conducted by Voluntary Anti-Doping Association. The American admitted his mistake, saying he had made a bad call and would own up to his actions. Anthony Joshua's replacement will be announced next week. That's it for this edition of Africa Live. Just send your feedback to the contacts on the screen and follow us on our digital media platform. I'm Peninah Karibe. Thanks for watching.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Jumia Technologies, one of the largest e-commerce companies in Africa, has listed on the New York Stock Exchange. In so doing, it has become the first African technology startup to list on a major global exchange. This listing on the New York Stock Exchange has now propelled Africa's online trading to a new high, signaling a new dawn for e-commerce in Africa. But with major strides yet to be made in internet infrastructure, coupled with diverse and rapidly changing domestic markets, what is the actual status of e-commerce in Africa? And what challenges lie ahead for Africa's online trade? I'm Beatrice Marshall. Welcome to Talk Africa. Well, Jumia's listing at the New York Stock Exchange has drawn renewed attention to the emergence of new development opportunities in Africa. But what does the online retailer's initial public offering mean for the continent's e-commerce sector? Uche Okoronkwo now takes a closer look at this development.
It was a watershed moment for Africa's tech ecosystems as Jumia, often tagged as Africa's Amazon, became the first major African-focused venture-funded tech company to go public. Analysts predicted there would be a good amount of interest, and they were right. After raising over $196 million, with the sale of about 13.5 million American depository receipts at about $14.50 each, its shares soared 75.59%, trading as high as $27 per share earlier on Monday.
I need a great deal.
For many retail investors, this listing is an opportunity to buy the African growth story. While this new listing does put Jumia in uncharted territory, many in Africa's e-commerce sector still question Jumia's African story. And that has resulted in the now popular Twitter hashtag, Jumia is not African. Jumia does have more than 4 million customers in about 14 African countries. But the company is registered in Germany, its headquarters are in Dubai, and its technical development is based in Portugal. The firm is also operating in a sector that is still very much in its infancy in Africa, and that shows in its bottom line. Though Jumia sales jumped by almost 40% last year, the firm is still not profitable. It warned investors that it has accumulated losses of almost $1 billion since its inception, and it relies on external financing. In markets like Nigeria, consumer-focused online retail players like Konga and Dealday are struggling to remain above water, or they have completely collapsed. But though Jumia's listing does reveal little about the fundamentals of investing in African e-commerce, the consensus seems to be that it cannot be ignored as a flagship for the sector. Online commerce will play a vital role in driving a new type of African development based around technology and innovation. And after all is said and done, perhaps most important is that Jumia has now gotten people to talk more about African tech. Uche Okoronkwo, CGTN, Africa.
And to help us analyze the status of e-commerce in Africa and the significance of Jumia's listing in the New York Stock Exchange, I'm now joined by my expert panel of guests. Olatunde Balogun, he's joining me from Lagos. He's the CEO of Rent Small, an online rental agency in Nigeria. In Beijing is Liu Chungshen, a professor at the Central University of Finance and Economics. Ron Kamwara is in Kampala. He's the CEO of Jumia Uganda. And with me in studio is David Owiro. He's an independent consultant economist. Gentlemen, thank you all for joining us in this conversation. Ron Kamwara, I'll start off with you as the CEO of Jumia Kampala. It's been quite a few weeks there for Jumia listing at the New York Stock Exchange, the first African startup to do so. Many are saying, though, that this is ushering in a new dawn for African startups. For Jumia and for you, though, what does this mean? What is the significance of your listing and the significance of this for African startups?
Well, indeed, it's a big milestone for Jumia and a big milestone for all tech startups in Africa. One, obviously, the New York Stock Exchange is a premier market in the world, and we're delighted to be able to IPO there. It's been many years of hard work, of creating value for our customers, showing impact for our sellers who have been able to make big revenues through Jumia. We've shown impact to our investors, and for now to reach the IPO level, I think is a significant milestone for all who are involved. We're very grateful and humbled as Jumia for this moment because our teams, our partners, our logistics providers have done an incredible job to get us to this moment. And most importantly, I think the African consumer who has trusted e-commerce and gone online to shop, to buy, to sell. And I think overall it's a coming of age of the African e-commerce and African tech. Our ambition here with this IPO is to increase our adoption rate. Whereas we're growing and growing very fast in all our markets, we're still small.
I want to get to Olatunde's view here because you've said it's a monumental moment for African tech startups. Olatunde, do you share that view?
Yes, I do actually. It's an exciting moment, especially for the fact that Jumia was started in Nigeria. And I mean, it's really big milestone, and the impact it's going to be tremendous going forward for Africa and even for Nigeria. For startup in Nigeria, young people that are trying to build something like myself, it's a moment for us to really believe that there's so much to be done and there's so much to be achieved. And Jumia, being a unicorn in Africa, the first company with 1 billion valuation, and then first tech company to be listed on a premier stock exchange market. Right. It's really, really, really good, and we are really excited about it.
David, what are your thoughts though, because African tech startups have, the last 18 months has been quite tumultuous for them, though it hasn't really been smooth sailing. Jumia itself hasn't been exactly that profitable.
Yes, certainly there's some leading, of course, that startups have to go through. And what is expected, most of the shock perhaps coming from the economic performance of Africa in general. But the long-term outlook is actually one that is quite positive. If we look at the growing consumption patterns on the continent, we see indeed a change of consumption patterns. People not only seeking online marketplaces, that are more convenient and that can deliver and offer logistical solutions that are able to meet the expectations, are certainly in demand. Secondly, also, if you look at our the demographic structure in Africa is changing. We have 2/3 of young people under 25, comprising within the African continent. And we know, as with a lot of young people, they have embraced the internet age and basically spending much of their time online and even doing most of their shopping online. But
the internet penetration, though, does vary from country to country. Some of the top big ones, South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya. Kenyan penetration is at about 86.1% here. When you look at it across the continent, though, how does it look in terms of e-commerce for you?
One positive thing is that the middle class is actually growing. And for the middle class, these are people who are basically spending between $2 and $20 a day. And if you consider that, most of middle class people have smartphones. And therefore, this augurs very well for e-commerce platforms that are able to connect marketplaces and connect with these people with these smartphones. And so given that large growth within that middle class, it certainly portends well for the future of the growth of e-commerce. At the same time, if you look at the payment solutions that are being innovated in Africa, and the many more emerging marketplaces, online marketplaces that are competing with each other, not only Jumia, but you have OLX, and you have all these other platforms that are emerging every other day. That competition certainly is good for growth, even though Jumia right now is not seeing profits, but certainly there is some long-term positivity within that growth. And so for me, I retain a very optimistic view of the e-commerce sector.
Professor Liu, are there comparisons though, because African startups are now going global given Jumia's situation here? Are there comparisons or parallels that can be drawn between e-commerce platforms in Africa such as Jumia and e-commerce platforms in China such as Alibaba, for instance, which is a massive organization here?
Yes, I think Alibaba's business model, they are very clear. The Jack Ma's business logic is very clear. First, he established Taobao. It's a internet giant for online shopping. When they started the business in Taobao, they just paid service for prepaid and all cash on delivery. Then it found okay, this is not good enough, so it's got 支付宝, what we call it, Alipay, it's online payment. This is very good to solve the problem of asymmetry of between the buyer and the seller, because it's kind of like a letter of credit in online. And then with Alipay, it established a financial giant kingdom called Ant Financial Group. It provides comprehensive financial services, including the personal credit records. So it's provided a lot of services like you can order food online, you can book the hotel, book the ticket, order the taxi online. So it's provide a lot of services online with Ant Financial Group. Then it created the Tmall. Then it created an artificial shopping festival called Double 11. You know that this is pretty huge in China because millions of people, billions of people, purchase products online on every November 11th.
Right.
So yes, this is a pretty very good business model for Africa companies, Jumia, to learn from Alibaba. Yes.
Ron Kamwara, there are those who are asking though that why the New York Stock Exchange? Why not the Nairobi Securities Exchange, the Johannesburg Securities Exchange? Why the New York Stock Exchange though? I mean, do you not have do you not have the leverage, or do African stock markets not have the power though to create investment for you?
No, we do believe in African markets, and indeed we did look at all options. But the reason that we selected the New York Stock Exchange is because, one, obviously it's the most premier, most dynamic stock exchange in the world. But most importantly, it does understand our business model more than any other market. Many companies like ours have IPO'd the New York Stock Exchange. And so investors in New York, and this is a global market. So we're not just looking at investors in New York, but we have to agree that investors at the New York Stock Exchange are more familiar with the Jumia way of business than many other markets that we considered. But obviously, all our business is in Africa. We are a big part of African economies. We employ thousands of people across the continent, and we're very delighted to be from Africa, but attracting investment across the globe. And for me, the significance of this is that for the first time, we have global investors at the premier stock exchange looking at Africa as a place where technology can create value, create impact for customers and sellers, and make money for investors. This is a remarkable milestone because if I'm a startup now in Africa, Jumia has proven that investors have confidence in the model. Investors have confidence in Africa. So outside of being much more experienced with our business model, I think it's a great milestone. It's a big ceiling we've been able to crash, and my hope is that many other startups from Africa are able to go globally and attract international investment while operating and expanding and doing business in Africa.
Gentlemen, we'll take a short break on the program, but do stay tuned. When we come back, we'll delve into the challenges of e-commerce in Africa. Stay tuned.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN.
Welcome to the world today on CGTN.
Welcome back to Talk Africa. Gentlemen, I'll begin the second part of the conversation with a quote from Dr. Mohisa Kitui, who is the Secretary General of UNCTAD, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. He said, and I quote, "Here in Africa, when ordering online, one has to pick, pay, and then pray." Ron Kamwara, I'll start off with you. Your thoughts on that, and how do you address that concern?
Well, it's a concern indeed, and the best way to address that, and what we've done in our markets, is to allow customers to pay on delivery. So customers are able to order, receive a product, look at it, and then pay on delivery. And we know that one of the main reasons that people choose to do cash on delivery is because they don't trust what they will receive at the end. On Jumia, the biggest thing we've done is we do verify all our sellers, we do verify all our partners, we guarantee with return 7-day returns. We have warranty on many of our products, and we know that we're dealing in a very difficult market whereby trust overall is at its lowest, and we need to make sure that customers have protections like free refund in 7 days. We need to be able to allow them to accept cash on delivery. We need to make sure that all our products are vetted, that we do hold our sellers accountable to make sure that online shopping is as safe as possible. When we're dealing with a very small section of customers, because e-commerce is at its infancy, we're still growing, we need to make sure that every transaction done is secure, is safe, that customers are protected. And I have to say that in our markets, trading online is much safer because the offline world doesn't have those protections. And so I think that more and more customers are realizing this, and the fear is subsiding. And if you look at the trajectory of Jumia, it tells you that, and the reorder rate and return rate, is people are happy and comfortable. But I agree with you, the fear is there. People are worried about whether they will get what they order for, whether it's safe, whether it's legitimate or genuine. And if you are to work in Africa, you have to solve all those issues. So payment issues, you have to solve the product quality issues, you have to experience issues. And I think that why we've been successful in our market is that we've been able to solve all those three.
David, do you find that there is a difference operating e-commerce platforms in Africa as compared to operating e-platforms in places like China or European countries?
Certainly, of course, with the biggest being the cultural differences. Typically, Africans tend to be distrusting, whether it is because of culture or whether it is because of the experiences one might not know. And so a lot of work for mainly e-commerce platforms has to go around ensuring that their service can actually be trustworthy. And so these additions in terms of verifications and ensuring that sellers actually do sell what they say they sell, and whether the product will be of the quality that the consumer expects. Those are things that have to be addressed at the onset. I think this becomes more of a challenge in the African context when you're moving across borders. because more often than not, the price that you see online is not the price that you ultimately pay for, particularly when it comes to cross-border trade. So taxes and in terms of customs and import duties on most of these products are often unknown, and so that being a factor, it sort of hinders international cross-border trade in Africa, because you cannot from the outset say the level of taxes you're going to pay for particular products.
Olatunde Balogun, even though your organization is mainly, your enterprise is mainly in Nigeria or Nigeria-based, what are some of the challenges you've met during your start-out period?
Okay, thanks. I think one of our biggest challenge right now is basically the supply side. Convincing landlord that this is the solution, this is the way forward. Why the demand is high, the supply side of it is still quite challenging. But we understand that if we are trying to solve a problem, then the persistence, the patience is all that is needed. I'm sure Jumia, they've been around for 7 years. They've also been persistent, just as Alibaba and Amazon. All these companies, they've been around for years, and they went through this persistence. So we know that as long as the demand is there, and consumers, tenants in this case, they are excited about our solution. We know that it's just a matter of time that we'll be able to solve this on a bigger scale. We're solving it. We're getting more landlords on a daily basis, property owners, but we still need to do more. And it just and we can through innovative solution, becoming very innovative. The CEO of Jumia Uganda was just talking about the different solution they've created in terms of even payment, what people can pay on delivery, cash on delivery. So we just need to be creative and innovative, and that is what we are doing with some of the challenges. This trust is very big, even with our own with our own products. Landlords, one of the question they will tell us or what they will throw at us is that how can I trust that a tenant that is paying monthly, we can pay for the entire duration of the contracts, which usually in most cases is 12 months, and we tell them, what, we do proper vetting, verification, but at the same time, with innovation, we've introduced rent insurance, which protects the landlord. With innovation also, we have standing order in place, which means that when our tenants, they receive payment, salary or whichever form of income in their bank accounts, we can automatically take it as at when due. So innovation is really the key to solving the challenges that any tech company can face in the market or in the industry they are trying to play in. And that's been it for us.
Professor Liu, innovation has become key for African startups here. Listening to the challenges that Jumia and the pay system in Nigeria are talking about, do you think the opportunity that is being afforded by Africa's population now in 1.2 billion, do you think that is outweighing the challenges that e-commerce platforms are facing in Africa?
Yes, I think the infrastructure is in Africa is not good enough compared to China. We have massive construction of railways, airlines, ports, and highway roads. It's all helped the development of e-commerce. The second, I think, is that the logistics. It's pretty important because you have to deliver the products from one side to another, from the business people to the consumers, and it takes time, takes money, and need a lot of investment and a lot of talented people to design and manage the system, and a lot of delivery people to participate in the process. So this is just a very important one. The third one is I think the political stability is also a challenge for Africa to develop, e-commerce or any other business, because there are from time to time there are, political issues or conflicts, worsen the business environment, and it's not very good for the investors or business people's confidence, and then because Africa's e-commerce, most of them start from the international trade, so trade facilities are also very important. How to cut down the tariff, how to make it convenient to cross-border e-commerce is very important for Africa e-commerce companies.
Right.
And then I think that all this not only need efforts from the companies, but also from the efforts from the countries. Most of these challenges could only be solved by the economic development and improvement of business environment.
Right, so gentlemen, I'm going to end this program on a note that I started. It has been a milestone for Jumia and African startups. So looking ahead though, Ron Kamwara, starting off with you, what is the future of e-commerce from where you're sitting?
Well, the future of e-commerce is great. I think with this IPO, I expect that we as Jumia will continue to do the same thing. That is, simplify people's lives by giving them the best prices and more options to buy and sell. We are confident that it's going to be a big boost also for the local tech scene in all our countries, that we expect that more investors will come in, that more entrepreneurs will have the opportunity to grow their businesses like Jumia has. And so the future of e-commerce is fantastic. There has never been a better time to be in e-commerce in Africa. This is the best time for tech in Africa. And then for Jumia, we will continue doing the same things we've always done, is that give the best experience to our customers, make value for our investors, serve our customers, and be a huge part of our economies. And my expectation is that we'll continue to do that.
Olatunde Balogun, this is the best time to be in tech in Africa. Do you agree?
Absolutely, absolutely. And what I think we're going to see is more of tech startups like Jumia that are going to go global, that are going to be listed on premier stock markets around the world. And rent small, we are in it. We are excited about what we are doing, and we're also leading our space.
David Owira, your thoughts. What is the future of e-commerce on the continent?
There's certainly going to be a lot more growth, at least in the long term. Growth driven mainly by increasing disposable incomes, as well as the demographic composition of Africa. We will see actually a demographic dividend, and with increase in incomes, definitely there will be more participation in e-commerce platforms as the consumer becomes more discerning in terms of the convenience premium that they're able to get from these platforms.
Professor Liu, you have the final word of the program.
I think there is a great future for the Africa's e-commerce development, because the economic development in Africa is still going on, and there is a great population and the market potential in Africa, and I think there is a bright future for e-commerce in Africa. Jumia is just a very good start, and it provides a solid proof for the whole world that in Africa there could also be internet giants like Jumia, like any other e-commerce platforms. So I'm very confident that in the future there will be more internet giants in Africa. Yeah.
Gentlemen, we leave it there for the moment. That's all we have time for this week. But thank you to my guests for their insights. Olatunde Balogun in Lagos. He's the CEO of Rent Small, an online rental agency in Nigeria. In Beijing, Professor Liu Chungsheng from the Central University of Finance and Economics. Ron Kamwara in Kampala, the CEO of Jumia Uganda. And with me in studio, David Owira, an independent consultant economist. Remember, we'd love to hear your feedback through our social media handles on Facebook and Twitter. You can also catch this and more episodes of Talk Africa on our YouTube playlist and the CGTN Africa website. To keep the conversation going and tune in again next week for more Talk Africa. From me, Beatrice Marshall, it's goodbye.